The Albigensian Crusade, a brutal chapter in medieval history, unfolded in the sun-drenched fields and ancient cities of Languedoc, a region in what is now southern France. This picturesque landscape, known for its rolling hills and serene beauty, became the backdrop for one of the most violent and transformative conflicts of the Middle Ages. This crusade, launched in 1209, was no ordinary military campaign. It was a fervent and relentless holy war, driven by the zeal of religious fervor and the desire to purify the faith. Sanctioned by Pope Innocent III, the crusade aimed at eradicating the Cathar heresy, a religious movement deemed a threat to the very foundations of Christendom. The Cathars, with their dualistic beliefs and rejection of the Catholic Church's authority, were seen as heretics who needed to be eliminated. For nearly 2 decades, the peaceful Languedoc countryside became a battleground stained with the blood of countless souls caught in the crossfire of clashing faiths. Villages were razed, and entire communities were uprooted in the name of religious purity. The Albigensian Crusade was more than just a religious conflict. It was a collision of cultures, a struggle for political power, and a testament to the enduring allure of religious extremism. The crusade not only sought to eliminate the Cathars, but also to consolidate the power of the French crown over the region. It was a time of great upheaval where alliances were forged and broken, and the social fabric of Languedoc was forever altered. The cultural exchange that occurred during this period left an indelible mark on the region's history and heritage. The Crusade's legacy would forever alter the religious landscape of Europe, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives, destroyed communities, and a chilling reminder of the dangers of intolerance and fanaticism. The ruins and relics that remain today serve as silent witnesses to the horrors and the resilience of those who lived through this tumultuous period. To understand the Albigensian Crusade, one must first grapple with the nature of the Cathar heresy that so terrified the Catholic Church. The Cathars, a religious group that emerged in the 12th century, posed a significant ideological threat to the established order of Christendom. The Cathars, also known as Albigensians after the city of Albi, where they were particularly numerous, espoused a dualistic worldview that stood in stark contrast to the teachings of the Catholic faith. This dualism was not just a minor theological difference, it was a fundamental challenge to the very core of Catholic doctrine. At the heart of Catharism lay a belief in 2 eternal principles, a good God who reigned over the spiritual realm and an evil God who held dominion over the material world. This belief system suggested that the material world, including the human body, was inherently corrupt and evil. The Cathars viewed the physical world as inherently corrupt, a creation of the evil God, and saw salvation as liberation from the cycle of death and reincarnation. They believed that true spiritual enlightenment could only be achieved by rejecting the material world and its temptations. They rejected the sacraments of the Catholic Church, including baptism and communion, and denounced the wealth and ostentation of the Catholic clergy. To the Cathars, these sacraments were meaningless rituals that did nothing to bring one closer to spiritual purity. Their austere lifestyle, marked by simplicity, poverty, and a strict moral code, appealed to many in Languedoc who had grown disillusioned with the perceived corruption of the Catholic Church. The Cathars' emphasis on personal piety and communal living stood in stark contrast to the opulence and power of the Catholic hierarchy. The Cathar perfects, who were the spiritual leaders of the movement, lived lives of extreme asceticism, renouncing all forms of material wealth and comfort. They served as both spiritual guides and moral exemplars for the Cathar community, embodying the principles of their faith in their daily lives. This growing movement, with its radical beliefs and increasing influence, was seen as a direct threat to the authority of the Catholic Church. The Church's response was swift and brutal, leading to the Albigensian Crusade, a campaign aimed at eradicating the Cathar heresy and restoring Catholic dominance in the region. The Cathars' rejection of the material world extended to their dietary practices, abstaining from meat and consuming only what they considered pure foods. Central to their faith was the consolamentum, a spiritual baptism administered near death, which they believed cleansed the soul and prepared it for the afterlife. Those who received the consolamentum were known as perfects, and were expected to live lives of extreme piety and self-denial. The Cathars' beliefs posed a direct challenge to the authority of the Catholic Church. Their denial of the sacraments, their rejection of the church hierarchy, and their criticism of clerical wealth and corruption struck at the very core of the Church's power and legitimacy. To the Church, the Cathars were not merely heretics, they were a dangerous threat to the social and spiritual order of Christendom. The Cathar heresy found fertile ground in the Languedoc region of southern France, a land of vibrant culture, economic prosperity, and relative religious tolerance. Unlike the northern French, who largely adhered to the Catholic faith, the people of Languedoc were more receptive to alternative spiritual beliefs. Languedoc's prosperity, fueled by trade and a flourishing agricultural sector, had given rise to a wealthy merchant class and a relatively independent nobility. These groups, less beholden to the French crown and the Catholic Church, were more willing to tolerate or even embrace the Cathars' message of spiritual purity and rejection of worldly authority. The Cathars' emphasis on poverty and simplicity resonated with many in Languedoc, where social inequalities persisted despite the region's overall wealth. Section 5. The Papal Response calls for reform and repentance. The Catholic Church, initially slow to recognize the gravity of the Cathar threat, responded with a mix of diplomacy and condemnation. The Cathars, with their dualistic beliefs and rejection of the Church's authority, posed a significant challenge to the established religious order. Papal legates were dispatched to Languedoc to preach against the Cathar heresy and call for repentance. These legates, often well-versed in theology and rhetoric, aimed to win back the hearts and minds of the people through persuasive sermons and public debates. These efforts, however, met with limited success. The local population, deeply entrenched in their beliefs, often viewed the legates with suspicion and distrust. The Cathar faith had taken root too deeply in the hearts and minds of the people. The Cathar faith had taken root too deeply in the hearts and minds of the people. Their clandestine meetings and secret rituals continued unabated, further solidifying their resistance to the Church's overtures. Pope Innocent III, ascending to the papacy in 1198, recognized the need for a more forceful approach. He understood that mere words and sermons would not suffice to quell the growing heresy. He launched a campaign of reform within the Church, seeking to address the corruption and abuses that had alienated many of the faithful and fueled the growth of heresy. Innocent's reforms aimed to restore the moral authority of the Church and to demonstrate its commitment to spiritual purity and integrity. Innocent also dispatched a new wave of preachers, including the charismatic Dominic, who would later found the Dominican order, to combat the spread of Catharism. These preachers, known for their ascetic lifestyles and fervent devotion, sought to provide a living example of the Church's teachings and to inspire the faithful to return to Orthodox Christianity. Section 6. The spark that ignited the crusade, the murder of Pierre de Castelnau. The situation in Languedoc reached a boiling point in 1208 with the murder of Pierre de Castelnau, a papal legate sent by Pope Innocent III to negotiate with the Cathar leadership. Castelnau, known for his uncompromising stance against heresy, had excommunicated Raymond VI, Count of Toulouse, for his perceived tolerance of the Cathars. While the exact circumstances of Castelnau's death remained shrouded in mystery, Pope Innocent III blamed Count Raymond for the murder, declaring him a protector of heretics and calling for a crusade against the Cathars and their sympathizers in Languedoc. The murder of Castelnau served as the spark that ignited the Albigensian Crusade, unleashing a wave of violence and destruction upon the region. The Albigensian Crusade, marked by its brutality and fervor, became one of the most infamous chapters in the history of religious warfare. Thousands of lives were lost, and entire communities were decimated as crusaders sought to eradicate the Cathar heresy from Languedoc. The siege of Béziers in 1209, where crusaders reportedly killed 20,000 men, women and children, stands as a grim testament to the ferocity of the conflict. The Crusades' leaders, driven by a mix of religious zeal and political ambition, left a lasting scar on the region, forever altering its cultural and social landscape. In the aftermath of the Albigensian Crusade, the once vibrant and diverse culture of Languedoc was left in ruins. The Cathar faith, which had flourished for decades, was all but extinguished. Survivors faced persecution and were forced into hiding, while their literature and places of worship were destroyed. In the wake of the Crusade, the Catholic Church established the Inquisition to root out remaining heresies, leading to further repression and control. The rise of the Inquisition marked a new era of religious intolerance and surveillance, as the Church sought to maintain its dominance and suppress any dissenting beliefs. Reflecting on the Albigensian Crusade, we see a tragic clash of faiths that left a deep and lasting impact on the region of Languedoc. The conflict, driven by religious fervor and political motives, serves as a poignant reminder of the destructive power of intolerance and fanaticism. The loss of life, culture, and heritage during this period is a somber chapter in history, illustrating the profound consequences of ideological warfare. As we look back on this dark time, we are reminded of the importance of understanding